It's real. It's real. You know the deal. You know the deal. Come on.
Hey, it's Shanté.
And I'm Natalie. Welcome to What's the Deal, a podcast powered by the Norfus Firm. At the Norfus Firm, we solve people problems. We work with employers and employees all around the world on HR and diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. So last episode, we were looking at these volatile economic times and how they layer on to what we've already been dealing with in terms of post-pandemic world, pandemic world, and how that impacts the workplace. And as part of the last episode, we looked at or talked about a study that we thought was quite interesting from the conference board that was a C-suite outlook. And so it really looked at what is going to be keeping up members of the C-suite at night. Yeah. What keeps them up at night. Yes. And so this was a study done late in 2022, 1,100 plus respondents, 700 of them were CEOs. And so in terms of the topics that CEOs are worried about that impact the work we do, there were three. And they fell in this quadrant that we talked about where it prioritized impact and focus. And so in terms of a high impact issue, we were dealing with labor shortages. Right. So not having enough talent obviously is a heavy impact on a business. We hear it and we see it all over. We're short staffed. You can go to even restaurants. We had to close early because we didn't have enough staff. I mean, it's pretty consistent that we're seeing. It's been pretty difficult for businesses to find people. A high focus issue relates to attracting and retaining talent. Right. Last episode, we focused on the retaining piece. So some of the tips and some of the foundational things we know need to happen for you to keep people at your workplace. The attracting piece is really kind of what we're talking about today. And it's centered around this thing that ended up as a low focus area. And I it's kind of mind boggling, but the fact that a low focus area right now for CEOs is having diverse talent pools or expanding their talent pools to include more underrepresented employees. What's the deal with the low focus on expanding talent pools?
It's weird. It's really weird. It doesn't make any sense. It's counterintuitive because, okay, so you're dealing with labor shortages. You want to attract and retain talent, but you don't want to expand your search. You don't want to expand your pool of where you get talent from. So you just want to stay in this very limited box of where you get people from. How are you even solving that problem then? It doesn't even make sense. And so we talk a lot about, we get on social media and we figure out what's going on. And it really, when I heard that, when we were talking about it, it reminded me of this post that we saw recently and I'm just gonna read it for you all, and it'll come up. If you're watching the video, you'll see it. But it says, I just want to be cozy at home, but also socialize and travel. Buy all the things, but also save all my money. And then get super fit, but also eat whatever I want and not exercise. Like what? Right. How?
It would be amazing. Let me just tell you.
Sure, it would be great.
If I could buy all the things and save all my money, amazing.
If I could eat whatever I want and still
be fit,
great.
And not exercise.
And not
exercise.
I like exercise. I do too.
But that's
it's like it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
No sense.
You want something without doing the work.
Right. It's like, what is it? The definition of insanity, where you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result. It's like you're still going to the same well, thinking you're gonna get some water. There's no water there.
Okay, we get real crazy with analogies.
Too many analogies.
Yeah, it's a lot of analogies. But the point is you can't get something for nothing.
No.
I mean, that is like what that boils down to. And so, okay, so let's just think about it from this standpoint. If we just continue to try to find people the way we're finding people, how does that solve the problem? Or put differently, what else can you do besides expanding the talent pool?
I mean, you can look at your workplace and see if you can make it more flexible to attract people. Maybe there's a policy or a work policy that you can shift and change so that people, want to work there because you offer them an opportunity to work from home 3 days a week as opposed to, I don't know, 4, like whatever it is from someone else. So there's an opportunity there. Referral bonuses, like people who already work there, if they bring someone in, then maybe they get a cut of something. And I mean, what else?
Total rewards.
Yeah, total rewards. So pay or benefits or learning and development.
So all of those things that we talked about, total rewards,
Flexibility,
referral bonuses,
Yeah.
those all fall under the category of employment branding and how you make yourself more
Right.
attractive to folks. We know that people are paying more than they were before, and that by itself is not solving the problem.
No.
So from my standpoint, here's the deal. Diverse recruiting has been a challenge for decades. Employers have been challenged by how they attract more diverse talent, right?
Right.
So it's understandable that you might feel like, oh, that is too hard. So I don't want to focus on that because we haven't figured that out yet. And we need people here
Right now, today.
But we know that the other piece is if you just are focusing on getting bodies in the job and you're just focusing on having a warm body in the seat, it doesn't actually solve the problem. We also know, and there's so much research, again, McKinsey being probably the leader of this, is that diverse teams increase profit and that folks that have teams that are diverse outperform companies that don't. So in these times that are volatile, you want to be pulling all the levers to make the money.
You need to be competitive. You need to make yourself the most competitive as you possibly can. And so it starts with your people. It all comes down to your people. So if you don't have that talent, that diverse talent, you're not going to be as competitive. You're not going to make as much money as you need to make in these shrinking, quote unquote, shrinking times. Here it is. Fun fact, 76% of millennials say that they'll leave their company if there are no diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives offered. At a time when attracting and retaining talent is a top priority for company leaders, DEI couldn't be more critical. Reach out through thenorfusfirm.com to learn about implementing an effective DEI strategy.
So how do we solve for identifying and attracting broader and more diverse talent pools?
Well, there's the intentionality piece that you spoke about. It really is, okay, looking at it, what's happening? How do we get there? You got to get creative. And also I would say, do the opposite. So if everyone is, shying away from the DEI stuff, double down. Right. Go for it. Like really.
It's like stocks.
Really.
Yeah. You're like, oh, when the stocks are low, buy.
Exactly. Right. It's the same thing. Like really, really do the opposite, because then the branding, the employer branding, which you're talking about, you're building your reputation because you're prioritizing this and people want to feel like this is a priority right now.
That
right?
You're speaking to me.
Yes.
And so I always say ASAP. What are your recruiting practices today? Because we do a lot of senior leader interviews with CEOs and other C-suite members, and their first thing is that we don't have good recruiters, right? So it's always, the recruiters, they're not good. And it's interesting because
it's a cop-out.
It is, and it's sort of like the leader divorces themselves from the process.
Exactly.
In the conversations we have with leaders that are incredible, they're talking about, they say they're an in-house legal department. They're talking about going to websites of law firms and perusing and seeing what lawyers work there and maybe being able to go and reach out to lawyers they see working at law firms doing what they may need to be done. There's many things that we talk to leaders about in terms of being proactive. If you're on a panel, did you have some brilliant panelists that you're like, whoa, we would need them here, build a relationship? Are you invited to, which I get a lot from GW Law School, go GW, and Go American undergrad, where all these opportunities to network with alumni, huge opportunities, especially if you're in specialized fields like, me being a lawyer, where, okay, there are law school alumni events, so you're going to go meet lawyers. Right. Go to those events. You should be foot down on the ground, constantly looking for talent, even when you don't need the person. It's like because we have to have an analogy. It's like when people always say, build a relationship with a banker before you need a loan. Exactly. Same thing. And then the other part is digging into where you are looking. We are still hearing, wow, it's so fascinating because we're still hearing when people talk about, for example, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, we hear people reference Howard University, and we hear people reference Morehouse, and we hear people reference Spelman. 3 dynamic, incredible organizations, but there are over 100 HBCUs in the United States.
Right.
So that means if you're really only focusing on like a very small number of them, you're missing out on a huge pool of talent. The other interesting sort of stat is that there are HSIs, which are Hispanic serving institutions. And the US in a Hispanic serving institution is one that 25% or more of the full-time students are of Hispanic descent. And so there are 345 colleges in the directory for HSIs, which means there are an incredible number of colleges that have a huge Hispanic talent pool.
Correct.
And there are, as of today or as of yesterday when we did the research, at least 80 universities that are prioritizing ways in which to serve neurodivergent students.
Right.
So those are just 3 examples of there is talent out there. The question is, where are you looking?
Right.
That's 1. 2, resources. I roll in my eyes just because it's like we hear these leaders talk and it's like, okay, you have 20 open positions, 30 open positions, and 1 recruiter. And it's like, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, when we do recruiting ourselves, when we have like 10 open positions, our recruiter spends anywhere between 20 to 25 hours a week on 10 positions. So if you start multiplying that out, and if you really want someone to do all these like magical things, you have to have the resources. And I say magical because, again, when you talk to leaders and they're like, oh, the recruiters, they don't know what they're doing. It's like, okay, well, if I have 30 open requisitions, I'm 1 person, there's a limitation on how much is going to happen. Again, you get what you give. And so I think when we were really talking about this piece of you kind of leave no stone unturned. And having a low focus on expanding your talent pool to include underrepresented groups hurts you financially at multiple levels.
Yes. You're just not getting the talent. You're not going to allow yourself to be as profitable as you can be. You're not doing your business any real service. You're not solving any problems by shortcutting this part of the process. Right. You're really setting yourself up to not do as well. But I mean, let's acknowledge it. Like, let's really dig in if we can, just for a little bit, to what's real out there. So it's like, we're saying this, go out and increase and talk to everybody and find and resource and folks and people doing this work are like, how? Because I still have these 20 jobs that I need to fill. I have all these other things I need to do and I need to manage this. So what does that look like in practice? So what advice would you give them to be able to do this for real in their organizations?
Have an understanding of what it takes to recruit somebody. The baseline understanding of it is not just posting your job on LinkedIn and waiting for people to apply. If we look at, again, our own internal data, for one of our clients, we filled more than 20 positions, and almost all of those positions were sourced. And sourced means our recruiter went out and looked for people who could fit the role. Now, people apply, and you obviously take those applications, but there's a lot of intentionality with good recruiting practices where you're actually going out and looking for people who don't know who you are and don't know that you have a job opening. So I think sometimes people just mistake it for, when we posted the job, like, where are my people? It's a very interactive process. So I think, one, having an understanding of the process at your place of employment. And if you're feeling like, it seems like it's not like robust enough, then moving into this next phase of where are the other places or the other ways. The last piece, which maybe is even the most important piece, is what I talked about around proactive recruiting. You are part of it, right? When we're looking for people on the team, we're not just sitting and waiting for Theo, who's our recruiter, to go and find us someone. Right. We're thinking about, okay, do we know anyone? Who can we go out to? When we're doing
job descriptions, we're in it with them. We're like, we don't just rely on him to come up with it. We're definitely there with him and figuring it out. It is. And collaborative, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the name of the game in terms of this expansion piece. So, as we close out here and again, think about where we are today, now more than ever, we need to be in places as employers of being able to attract incredible talent and to to do that, you'd be sort of cutting yourself at the knees
Yeah.
by saying, we're not going to focus on expanding our talent pools to make sure underrepresented folks are part of it. Please don't.
Don't do that.
And in terms of this age-old problem of how do we attract not just underrepresented folks, but people in general, look at your recruiting practices like ASAP and recognize your role as a leader in the process, that it's not just something you delegate, that is something you need to collaborate on and be actively enrolled in.
Facts.
So we're always happy to be here. Lots more to come. And as we look forward in 2023, got to focus on your people.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see you soon.
Bye.